Hello, everyone out there. Welcome to 24 Authors in 12 Hours, October edition. I am here with Michael Shepard. Michael, I'm going to go ahead and put your website right into our chat, and I'm going to open up to you. Let's talk about all of your amazing books. You're a prolific author. You have some new books that are going to be coming out soon,
I do.
and you are in Colorado Springs, Colorado.
Hmm. Sure. It's so great place to be, great place to work with other writers. There's some good writers conferences here and some very helpful organizations to develop and sustain writers. So luckily, I'm a part of that. Pikes Peak Writers. Yeah.
Great. And so the first book you wrote was Easy Street. That's the book of yours that I have read. Let's talk. Well, let's go. We're going to start there with Easy Street.
All right. Well, so Easy Street was a lot of fun, and it's the first thing that I published. Now, again, being a military guy, we'd always write. There was always something, some article to write for the paper or something. But when I retired for the first time in 2008, I said, I better come up with a hobby, something to fill my time. Kids are going to college. So I said, well, what do I like? And I like Raymond Chandler books, Philip Marlowe, kind of a tough guy, private eye. So I developed one of those. So my guy, Paul Doyle. And then I wanted to put him in a situation where most people would find uncomfortable, failing marriage, failing business. When push came to shove, he didn't do either, and he went home to live with mom. And I said, well, that's a great way to start. Now, how can I build him back up again? So that's what I did with Easy Street. And then I also wanted to put him in a situation where he was even more uncomfortable. He was hired to find a missing stripper, and so dumped in the middle of strip club life. Because I wanted to say, well, how can you rebuild yourself, and how can you rebuild yourself in a situation that, and with people that you wouldn't think would be beneficial to your life. And then I thought I was done with Paul Doyle, and but I'm not. I've dumped him down into now the next two books I'm working on are both Paul Doyle, picking him back up again with his other characters.
So let's talk about that a minute. The writer's journey, where you're like, I'm done with this character, but the character came
Yeah,
back and was like, well, you're not done with me, sir.
yeah. Well, it's interesting. So what had happened was last year they had a short story competition here, and I submitted a short story, one that I had written a few years ago, most fun I've ever had writing. And then a buddy of mine said, "No, write something new." So I took an experience I had down in southern Mexico, and right along the Guatemala border. I worked down there for quite a while, and I used to watch people go illegal, that I used to call illegal immigration and unregulated commerce, as we would call it, from Guatemala to Mexico. And I said, yeah, I should put Paul Doyle down there because his girlfriend, former stripper, had Mexican heritage. I said, well, let's get them into Mexico. And so that story just kind of developed. Uh, they selected the short story for publishing, but then they said, well, we can only use one of yours. So they took the fun one and didn't take the Paul Doyle mystery down in southern Mexico. But I said, geez, I think I have something here. So again, if you go by the experience you have, me working down all throughout Mexico and seeing the different things, it's then how can you take characters you love and put them into more uncomfortable situations and see if they can find their way out of it. So while every novel I've written was meant to be a standalone. You like to keep it a way where they can continue. So for two out of my three, if I so choose, I can. One of them I can't. One of them came, it was supposed to be a series, but then I decided to end it after one. But I think if you write, you can write in such a way where characters can be, unless you kill them off, characters can be sustainable.
Oh, even if you kill them off, there's always ways to bring them back, right?
Well, there is. You can write a prequel, or you can take other characters from when you killed someone off, and then you make them the protagonist. So it really comes down to what are you doing with your characters?
But like, I
And
kill a
then,
character and bring her back because she wasn't really dead, right? So depends on
it
how
might not be
bad
my
you kill
genre,
them and if your world has magic.
and not my genre.
So I'm going to put in here another book, and so I definitely want to encourage anybody following, anybody in the future. The next book here is Hell with a Gun, The Legend of Elton Collins. Let's talk about that book a little bit.
Yeah, it's interesting. That was actually the first thing I wrote, but then it became a bottom drawer book. I said, well, I want to teach myself how to write a novel. And so I said, well, it's got to be easy to write a Western, right? It's not. And so I wrote that. But when you got to get 1878 Dakota Territories feel, you can get from page 1 to page 400. You can. It's just the quality is a little difficult. I said once I got to that where I could sustain a thread throughout the whole thing, then I put that in my bottom drawer. And then I wrote Easy Street, which was closest to my heart. But then I said, well, what am I going to do next? So I blew the dust off the first one. So my dad likes Westerns, and I always like reading Westerns, the Louis L'Amour books that a lot of people read growing up. And I said, well, let's see what I can do with this. Let's see what I can do with Hell with a Gun. And it's more complex than I thought it was going to be. It's not just a shoot 'em up Western. It's a very personal journey through love and loss and redemption. And I really enjoyed writing it, much more than I thought I was going to. It's everything you write. It's like a kid. They're all near and dear to your hearts.
Sorry about my dog. He's excited about something. No, I think an important thing here is for authors, you don't necessarily know. And I think for most authors, we probably have half a dozen half-written manuscripts sitting around somewhere.
Sure.
Now that I'm semi-retired, I'm looking at those and trying to dust them off and get some things actually published, so that's exciting. Let's talk about your third book that is published now. And this book is The Long Game.
Mm-hmm. This was an interesting one. First, I published Easy Street in 2012, and then Hell with a Gun in 2014, and then I took a hiatus, which I wasn't planned. That's the way life goes sometimes. You just don't know what life's going to give you next, and it gave me lemonade for a while, but that's what helped me develop me, And so around the time that COVID came, and I had a lot of time, I started remembering things from back about 2013 or 14. I walked around a Minnesota cemetery. You asked me why, and we'll both know, I like to say, but I did. And what I found was what seemed to be a preponderance of young people's gravestones. So that never left me. I always said, why? And I just couldn't figure that out. And then I started sneaking up closer to it around COVID time about saying, well, let's pull that thread a little bit. Why could that possibly be? And you can come up with a pretty interesting story. And originally it was some strange cult up in the woods of Maine. No, that wasn't going to be it. That's not my story. And you always have to have a protagonist. So I picked a guy again who going through a very strong change in life and being put in a situation where he never could have imagined himself. So it's as much a story about him trying to find him as it is trying to find what was really going on. And then even more so, what was the reason behind it? So the title, The Long Game, really is thinking someone may plan something out 20 years ago. And there may have been multiple people planning things out, and you may not know whose long game you're actually playing. And so as Harry was finding out, he was thinking he was playing one person's long game, and it may have been actually two or three people, and they all intersected. And he was in the intersection of all that. Not that he was trying to solve a mystery. He was just trying to solve life after a great loss in his life. If you have a moment, Amy, I think as a writer, you need to start out. Like a friend of mine used to tell me to get right in the story. And if you'd indulge me to read the first page of The Long Game, this gets right into the story.
Let's go ahead and do that. Normally, I love to do a reading, but I think there's nothing better than an author.
Let me just zip through the first page. We sat together like we always did on Sunday mornings, as close as sardines in a can, chopsticks, cigarettes, pieces of gum in a pack, as close as two objects could be. Some parts of us were always connected. A hand on a leg, our fingers laced together, and our feet touching under the table. Today it was shoulder to shoulder, Angie and me. As always, Angie and me. She glanced at her watch. Papers here, Dia. I'll get it, I said, without a hint of conviction. First, because I knew Angie was going to beat me out the door anyway. Second, because she gave her all to those she loved. When Angie could shower affection on another, she felt complete. Now, far be it from me to rob her of that opportunity. The paper beckoned her from the front lawn. She kissed me on the forehead. Be right back, which, as it turned out, was a lie. She didn't come right back. No biggie. I figured a neighbor had come by. My go-to guess when my wife was missing, extra chatty neighbor Bella Cromartie had spotted Angie making a dash for the paper and had made a headlong charge for our yard so she could tell Angie story number 1462 about the escapades of her grandchildren who just moved back with her. Or maybe Bella was telling Angie about their upcoming summer vacation trip, or to ask if we had any plans for the 4th of July. But as it turned out, none of those were remotely true. They were not even ballpark close. Because when I walked out the front door to extricate Angie from Bella Cromartie's determined clutches, what I found instead was my wife's lifeless body crumpled on the lawn. So that's how to get into a story. So as you can see from the first page, a guy whose entire life was built upon his partnership with his wife now no longer has her. And so this is about the long game, about what happens next. So my guy Harry trying to figure from losing his wife on page one, how can he get through life when all he ever did was rely on her and their relationship together? So I like getting right into the story. You're either in a gunfight or someone's dying or something interesting has to happen on page one.
Yeah, I went to a writers conference recently that talked about that, and I also do some coaching. Let's talk a little bit about your experience. You were mentioning being in writers groups, and I think it's so
Yeah.
important for writers to be able to connect with other writers. Let's share that in your journey, because
Yeah.
you've been publishing for over a decade now,
Mhm.
and like you said, you took a break, you came back, life gave you some curveballs, and now you're
Yeah.
not just got the most recent book out, but two more on the way. Let's talk a little bit about your writing journey and being part of writers groups.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, I retired from the military in 2008, and I said, geez, I would like to write, but I don't know how to write other than I could write a newspaper article or maybe a magazine article, but that's not a novel. So I got involved with Pikes Peak Writers, a huge group, very supportive, that encourages the writing journey, but also provides a lot of tools to help writers do so. Um, One of the interesting things is it's almost like you're building a family there. Very, very supportive. You know each other. You know each other's stories. You encourage each other to develop their own writer's voice. If we have time, we can talk about writer's voice later. So I am involved with them, and it's interesting because some of the same people that I've known since 2010 we're in touch with. And again, I took a hiatus for like 9 years. But when I got back to a writers conference this year, it was like seeing family again. Uh, how are you writing? You feeling? How's the advertising? Are you on draft 26 now? How's that coming? Um, but you all have some of the similar experiences. You can support each other because you know the trials and tribulations and the difficulty in publishing. Um, it's also very helpful to find, as a writer, this is not a solo journey. And I'm not just talking about family to encourage you, but finding other writers to work with. So I was very lucky that a buddy of mine, unfortunately recently deceased, but he called me in and said, let's write together. And I had never written anything more than maybe a newspaper article before. But he liked the way I put words together. And then we got another person, then another person, and we started working on each other's work. And it's so helpful because if you get in the right group, writers critique group, where everything is supportive, it's constructive, not destructive, right? Some people are in a writers group to be destructive. Now I want to tear someone else down because I'll feel better about myself. Well, if you get the right group, it's I want to help you. I have a viewpoint. What do you think? It's a different one. Take it for what it is, but it's very supportive. And I've been very lucky to work with a couple of writers. One that's now she's just getting ready to publish book 8, and she's very successful. We've worked together on all of hers, and she's worked on mine, as well as some other folks. But you've got to then find the right people, not just people, but it's kind of like friends, right? You don't want to just find people that are around to spend time with. You want to find the right people to spend time with. And so I hope as other people look for that, as you're looking for critiquers, someone to work with it, someone who can help you, and you can also provide a different perspective to them, but in a very, very supportive way. You can be hard, but you need to be supportive.
And a really important point there is everyone's not going to like your work. Everyone's not going to
Mhm.
agree with it. You have to have your core lines and say like this is it. This is like I'm not cutting this on the floor. But also that flexibility to say, you know what, I'm seeing your point, and this is a way I can
Mhm.
craft it better and change it.
Yeah, I worked with, and I've done a lot of reviews with other writers, and I was working with one woman who, um, the big mistake I made, I should have taken her entire book and just gone through the whole thing. But instead, about every 5 pages, I would send it back to her with my comments about how I could see there was some holes in the plot. And but then she wanted to argue with me about every comment I made, and all that caused me is to stop working with her. I said, I can't, I can't keep doing that. But if we could work together in a supportive way, without feeling defensive, and that's really a key. If you feel defensive as an author, you may want to take a breath, take a step back, and say, "This person, I asked this person to come into my life and help me. I shouldn't be so defensive if they tell me something that I'm not comfortable with." So it really, but I'll tell you, getting a critique group where the personalities mesh and can all be supportive to each other, it's hugely important, but it's pretty difficult.
I think that's hugely important, and definitely you hit on a key point here, and I don't know if you intended or not, but it's know your audience. Who are you writing for?
Mhm.
Because you want to make sure that you're being true to the people who are going to be reading your book later on.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a real good one. Number one, know your subject, write about something know who you're writing for. Yeah, there are a lot of people that look at famous authors or famous books and decide I'm going to do that. I'm going to copy what that author said. But if that's not you, if it's not your personality or your knowledge or your style or your writer's voice, which I think is really, really important, you're just faking it. You're hoping to make it based on what someone else has done. So know what people like, but also, boy, you really have got to know what you like. So for me, it was interesting. I had a meeting with a very famous agent, Donald Moss from New York City. Everybody knows Donald Moss, very famous. And I had dinner with him one night, and we were talking about authors and who I liked. And I was talking about my progression of authors that I liked. And I was really saying how I like Raymond Chandler. And he said, well, maybe someday something like you'll mature enough to like Dashiell Hammett. And I'm like, I like Raymond Chandler. Okay, so I've read Dashiell Hammett, and that works great for some people, but for me, it's the Raymond Chandler, tough guy, punch you in the nose and then go have a drink with you, or feel bad about it afterwards to sit in your living room and have a drink. That's more what I feel. That's more how I think I want to capture it. Now, is everybody going to buy that, or do they want to buy the next Harry Potter? Well, I can't write the next Harry Potter, but I can write the next knuckle busting private eye crime drama type thing. So it's important to know also who you are and what you like, and not necessarily what's hot at the moment.
Yeah, great point. And the author before you, which is just kind of funny how I love how these things all flow. He actually wrote a book that's a magic based book. Beale's the Prince of the South Side, based in Chicago, all based on magic and stuff. But he very much wanted to write it with a very Afrocentric, African American kind of experience of what if you take magic kids, but they're living in Southside Chicago, right? And so obviously there's a niche audience that he's going for,
Mhm.
and I think it's really important. You've brought up so many amazing points, and you brought up author's voice, writer's voice a few times.
Mhm.
Let's talk about that before we run
Yeah.
out of time.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite things. Know who you are and how you say things, right? If we are all, the way we're constructed is unique. You grew up a certain way, I grew up a certain way. We grew up male and female, very different. I grew up on a dairy farm in Maine. I think about Maine, right? I think about how people talk, how they live. I think about when people get their, go ahead and get their disability check and then straight to the liquor store, I mean, I know that, right? So those are the kind of the characters you think about. You also have to know, how do I want to express the things I say? I always have this sense of self-deprecation. So I like my characters to all have something. They laugh at themselves. I always say they laugh at themselves before someone else can laugh at them. So that's important to me to always think about it that way. How do I want to express them? Find my own rhythm. I find my own rhythm like a guy who grew up in Maine. Now, granted, I left when I was 18, but you can take the boy out of Maine, but you can't take Maine out of the boy. So you still have to understand that. But then you also have to decide. So a friend of mine, Barbara Nicholas, a very really well-known writer, she writes very poetic fashion, wonderful description, and I'm more of a short to the punch. You're not going to read a lot about the smell of flowers in my books. You're not going to feel the trees dancing in the breeze very much, but you will know what it feels like to be sitting in a bar thinking, do I have enough money to buy another drink? And is that the right thing? And how will I feel tomorrow? That's what you'll get from mine instead. That's just the way I express myself. That's my voice, short, to the point, with a lot of regrets about things in life. And so, uh, like I said, but then also every book is different, right? If a book like Easy Street is about a private detective. A book like The Long Game is about a guy who'd lost his wife and lost his way in life. So that has a little bit more description, a lot more introspection than just, I'm going to go out and find somebody and I'm going to shoot somebody if they get in my way. So you have to also know, what am I writing and what sounds right? But the way you express yourself is you. And I always used to tell writers, you have to be honest to you, the way you think, the way you speak. You don't think like everyone else because no one's like you. So what is the uniqueness of the way you express yourself? And then don't be afraid to develop that.
I think that's super important. And I talk to people a lot and coach people on how to use AI as a tool for writing and not to do their writing. And that's a lot is, what is your unique voice using AI, especially AI for research? It just makes life easier and faster, and use the tools you have. But so many people, you see authors using the AI to do the writing and losing that unique voice. And so it is that line in between using a tool and then letting the tool do the job.
Well, and that's what I found out very recently. I'd never touched AI till very recently, but I said, just for fun, what would I do about my next story? And it's really, so I'm writing two books at once, one sequel. So I want to get the second book right. So I have to get the first book right. So the second book, I said, just for fun, let me just dump part of that in to see how different it would be. It's not my voice. It's another voice that has nothing to do with me, nothing to do with the way I think. You can take all the characters you want and dump them into a situation. But if it's not you, and if it's not the way you would express yourself, I'm like, oh, that sounds like somebody else wrote it. It's true. It was AI, but it wasn't me. And yet, if you want to be honest with yourself, in the end, you want to craft something, you want to build it, you want it to be uniquely yours. So, like you said, AI for research is a great idea. That's what I should be thinking about. But then it's got to come from this, right? It can't come from your computer. It's got to come from these.
Well, I think there's that. And then I talk about, for people, you brought up a great point about physical, like being with writers, right? I teach a workshop on using AI as your virtual writing circle. And you could take a little excerpt and put it into 3 different AIs and get 3, ask like, how is this for world building? How's, some specific questions, and you'll get 3 different responses from 3 different AIs.
Yeah.
And then you, as a writer, just like you would in a real writer circle, can determine, like, is this actually valuable feedback for me? Do I want to incorporate it? I did find using AI said, I don't think this is really consistent with what this character would do. And I thought, you know what? I'm trying to avoid like writing 2 chapters here. You are probably correct, AI. And I actually did the right thing and rewrote it. But there's a very different thing between letting AI do some world building and character analysis. Just like you would let humans do. And that goes back into what you said, finding those critiques. We are quickly running out of time. What else do you have coming up? And while you do that, I'm going to put some links into the chat. So
Amy, I'll go real fast. So
events, or go ahead. I'll let you talk.
So my next 2 books, which I hope to have done by next year, are so I took Paul Doyle and his girlfriend Ecstasy. I always love her name, Ecstasy. People want to know why. Well, you find out. And I've dumped them down into Mexico to see what's next with them. So I have to get them both right. So I've got to get book 1 on one part of the border so I can get book 2 on the other part of the border right. So the other thing is, baseball season's almost done, so I can get back to writing. No more goofing around now, right? No more watching baseball, so I can get back to writing. So I get excited every day. When I wake up at 3:30 because I can't sleep, that's my time to write. Don't wait for time to write, create time to write, and stay at it. So I'm very excited to to get back to visiting Paul in ecstasy down in Mexico this afternoon, and then every afternoon.
Thank you for that. What I'm sharing right now is all of my books that I'm a solo author on are available right now for download for free today. So anybody who wants to download those. The other thing I want to highlight is that this series is put on by 24 authors in 12 hours, is a work of love and passion. And so if you like the content and what we're doing, please donate to us if you are able. The other thing is we have some really cool merchandise. So if you want to check out any of our merchandise, we have some great products. We've got little cool coffee mugs and things like that, and definitely would love for you to check those out. We are having to wrap up. Is there anything that we have not talked about that you still wanted to talk about?
No, Amy, I think we're pretty much maxed out on our time. It's great to see you again. I appreciate this opportunity. You know, writers love talking about writing. So thank you for this opportunity.
Well, and the thing I do want to highlight before we go is the other thing is indie authors and small authors. We are constantly having to promote our books and market it. And the number one thing that you can do out there as a reader is, besides getting our books, is please go ahead and leave those reviews. Reviews are the bread and butter of what we need. So definitely take Michael's books. That put all the links to his as well as his website, and when you get the new books out, please share those links with us, and I will make sure that we get those out as well.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Amy. I did enjoy this.